Bonjour and good morning and welcome back to another episode of the What's Going On podcast. And yeah, I'm pretty sure this is podcast episode 16. So, welcome back. And today I'm joined with a very special guest, a documentary filmmaker, a podcast host, an investigative journalist, and author, Phelim McAleer.
So everybody, welcome to the What's Going On podcast, and today I'm joined with Phelim McAleer. How are you doing?
Good, good. Thanks for having me on, Connor.
Oh, perfect. Glad to have you on. And so, how did you begin in journalism? What was your introduction?
Um, well, I did a journalism. I went to Queen's in Belfast and did an English degree, and then I did a journalism course, the National College for the Training of Journalists. That was at Belfast Tech. It was the first year. Funny enough, journalism used to be a trade, not a profession, and you used it up until the year before. A year I did it was the first year. It was a postgraduate as opposed to a graduate. It was always seen as a thing that you did it when you were 18, that course, but they changed that year I did it. It was mostly postgraduate. I'm not sure that was progress, but that's the way it was. So postgrad, I did a diploma in journalism, which was 1 year long, which is exactly what I think a journalism course should be, not 3 years long, not a degree, but that's a different subject.
I
And
completely agree with you. I think 3 4 years for it is crazy.
yes, it's. I'd love to know what they study for 3 or 4 years. Maybe you can tell me. Um,
It's
so
a lot of the same. It's like a lot of the same stuff. Like we have a full year where we don't go to class. We have like a internship and maybe like a study abroad program for one full year.
yeah, I mean, before I went on the course, the big problem with internships was that apparently they used to have them at Easter, and the good people would go on these internships and spend a week or two with the companies, and the companies would just say, "Don't go back and get that piece of paper. Stay here and work." And
Yeah,
journalism is all about what you did last week or what was on what's in your resume. It's not what piece of paper you have. So they didn't. A lot of times didn't even finish the course
yeah.
after 6 months or 8 months of teaching. So the people who were employing them thought that was enough. So. I mean, yeah, we'll talk about anyway. Let's talk about. You asked a question, so we'll
Yeah.
get on to that. And then I obviously, the thing is getting your first job in journalism. So I remember I was going to go off to Spain to teach English and write my Hemingway-esque novel, and then there was one job available, I think, in the whole of Northern Ireland. It was with a small newspaper and many of these local newspaper jobs at the time, they weren't even advertised or they're advertised locally.
Yeah.
And nobody at the time, funny enough, it was in Crossmaglen, County Armagh, local paper there, very local paper, hyper local. And nobody, believe it or not, no one really wanted to go to South Armagh to work because it was kind of bandit country at the time. And I think there wasn't that many people in for the job. And I thought that was a great opportunity and went there, applied
Yeah.
for the job, and funny, used my cuttings from my internship, actually. I mean, that's the great value of an internship is you get cuttings back when they were actually cuttings, where you cut them out of the things called newspapers. And,
Yeah.
and got the job. And once you started working in South Armagh during the Troubles, you know, then you started to build up a very impressive portfolio, and the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, yeah. So you found it relatively easy to go, straight out of college and into your first journalism job.
Yeah, no, yes. Funny, I was lucky in that respect, but it was everyone thought. I mean, Crossmaglen was just this one horse town. It wasn't even Dundalk. It wasn't, Galway or anything like that. It's a village almost, and
Yeah.
um, it, it's people did think I'd get stuck there or get lost there, but you can make your own luck once you get in there, make your own stories and freelance. And that was back when if there was a market for freelance stories then, and there was budgets to pay them,
Yeah.
and there was a lot going on there at the time.
Yeah. And so what was it like jumping from reporting on, let's say, Northern Ireland, and then going in to was it the Economist and the Financial Times?
Well, it's all the same. It's just journalism, it's just journalism. I mean, the great thing about the Crossford Examiner at the time was 1 minute you'd be covering Sports Day, and
Yeah.
and literally, you the next day you would be under under the table while there was a mortar attack on the police station with your phone in your hand, reporting to the radio station in Belfast saying there's a mortar attack on the police station. They used to drive up with trucks and vans and fire
Mm.
mortars in at the police station, and our office was 500 yards from the police station. So you'd literally be sitting there, and next thing the mortar would go off, and you know, one would go off, and then two would go off, and you'd wonder how many more were coming. So you literally have to get onto the table. But there was a competitive streak in all the radio stations not to be the first to report these attacks.
Yeah.
So the first thing you do is phone the free phone number on downtown radio, and just do a report. And they always had a news on the hour and every half hour. So they would just say, it's been a mortar attack on Crossford Police Station, and here our reporter on the scene is Phelim McAleer, and they just play my little 30-second clip. I'm here. There's been 3 bombs, and so
Yeah.
you do the full gamut working for the Crossford Examiner. So I went to the Irish News after that. You see,
Yeah.
of Belfast, and did everything there, and then became night editor after a while. It covered breaking news, and that often involved rewriting the front page if there's a breaking story and that. So, and then I went to the Sunday Times, so doing crime and paramilitary stuff as well. And I suppose that was a steady progression. But really,
Yeah.
when you work for a local paper, you can actually work for anybody. It's funny. It's
Yeah.
funny like that. You're more likely to get pigeonholed in a national paper. If you go and work for a national paper, you could end up as the environment correspondent, God help you, or the education correspondent. And then how do you go to Eastern Europe and write about EU accession or privatization? It's just, that's to me, that would have been difficult. But when you've worked for these national newspapers as a general reporter, that's a good grounding, especially in a very newsworthy place. I mean, you guys don't remember what the Troubles were like, but
Yeah.
it was a major international story,
Yeah.
massive international story on your doorstep.
Would you say that like let's say if you're working as not let's say not like a general, but if you're what's the word I'm looking for? If you can cover a wide range of different topics, let's say like what you do with your local newspaper,
Yeah.
it can open up other opportunities than let's say being stuck in one position, I guess.
Yeah. General reporting is a good place to be. Now, of course, you can build up an expertise if you become the environment reporter or the education reporter. You can write a book. You can break really. I mean, the great thing about being a specialist reporter is you can break stories. You can break international stories because you really get to delve deep into a topic. And sometimes these topics that you might delve deep into can become international stories, and then you're the expert on it. So that there's that advantage. But in terms of really getting your grounding in journalism, a general reporter is a pretty good place to be. And I think that's why, and you'll find that the environment reporter is very territorial.
Yeah.
And if you start doing environment stories, then you'll encounter some sharp elbows. But no, yes, being a general reporter is a great place to be because it just gives you so much experience, and it gives you experience of writing quick stories about something you don't know much about, right? You have to become a very quick learner, a quick writer, a quick working out what the story is. Working out what the story is, and that's what being a general reporter will help you do.
Mm. And did you have to pick up different languages, well, let's say Romanian, Bulgarian, when you were specifically reporting on these, or was there a different process around it?
Well, yeah, I picked up some Romanian, but we had a fixer
Nice.
for both countries who also doubled as a translator. So you do have when you go to these places, you acquire a fixer.
Did you always have the idea when you began in journalism that documentary was your ideal place, or was it something that came to you?
No. I mean, when you say documentary, what do you mean?
Like, let's say documentary filmmaking and maybe filmmaking in general. Was it something that you always wanted to go into?
No. I was very much a print person,
Mm.
but actually, what happened was we were in Romania, and it was when Romania was the was becoming the film center of Eastern Europe. It was becoming the Hollywood of Eastern Europe. It was the early 2000s, and lots of movies were being filmed there for the first time. And basically, we're in Bucharest. It was a pretty grim place at the time, and there was 1,000 foreigners living there, and it seemed like 700 of them were all in the film industry. A lot of famous actors passing through, that kind of thing. And there's only 3 pubs that people would go to, and every time you'd go to a pub or a restaurant, there would be film people all around. I also wrote a lot of stories about the film industry, so I spent a lot of time in movie sets. It was for the Financial Times, it was a big economic story. So I started thinking about how you tell stories through film, just by talking to these people. And then we came across this really, really great story about a Romanian girl who was adopted to Canada when she was 8 years old. Me and my wife, we came across this story, and she was a young girl, an 8-year-old, adopted by a heart surgeon and an accountant, went to Canada, went to school, was part of the family, and the mother became pregnant with her own girl baby, and decided they didn't want the child anymore. So after 18 months, took her to Toronto airport and put her on a plane on her own back to Bucharest, abandoned her. So we had a great story. I remember my wife had thought she'd done a deal with Globe and Mail in Canada to cover the story. They were going to put it in their magazine, and they tried to screw her. It's very funny. They tried to steal the story off her. Yeah. Just be careful out there, freelancers. And wouldn't give her a byline and all this. So we thought, and then I remember thinking, you know what? I want to film that. We wanted to take the girl back to meet the people who had abandoned her. And I thought, you know what? I think I want to film that confrontation. I realized this was a story that was wasted on print, that this needs to be filmed. So we took the story and pitched it to a documentary film crew who were in Bucharest covering a different story, a Canadian one. And they jumped at us, and we went ahead and did the story. And so that's the thing, it was just, I felt the story deserved to be made in film rather than on print. And I think that's been the guiding thing, is like, you think, what's the best way to tell this story, rather than let's make a documentary about this. No, what's the best way to tell this story? And sometimes it's through a documentary, sometimes through a movie, sometimes through plays, sometimes through an internet story or a print story, or a Substack.
Very interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting. And who would you say was your, let's say, influence? Who was your probably biggest influence into getting into journalism or getting into documentary filmmaking? Did you have someone that you specifically looked up to in the industry?
In journalism, actually, I don't think there was anyone as such. We were just living. I was just living in the middle of an international news story, So that was the kind of thing. It was just the urge, the knowledge that the truth was very important. So I think that was really the influence on me. In terms of documentary filmmaking, I wouldn't say he influenced me, but Michael Moore obviously was a sign that you could be successful. Now he messes with the truth. I don't think he's an honest journalist. I don't think he makes honest documentaries, but he makes effective documentaries. So I looked at him and what he did. This is what people they waste a lot of time and energy trying to mess with genres, and trying to. I'm going, no, just look at what people have been doing for the last 50 years. It worked because it's successful, right? Look at what other people did to be successful. Look at how they did it. Now, once you get become an expert in the genre, you can mess with it, but you need to understand the genre you are in. Whatever
Yeah.
you're in, you need to understand it, how it works, what the tropes are, what the stories are, what the habits of the readers are, because you don't want to mess with your audience. Or if you're messing with them, you have to mess with it from a place of confidence and knowledge and skill.
Yeah.
So if you're going to surprise your audience, be careful, but also know that you're surprising them. And
Okay.
do it for a reason. If you're funny enough, if your story doesn't look like all the other stories in that genre, you're doing something wrong. And I know, that may sound like I'm telling you not to be original. I'm not. I'm telling you that audiences are educated to look at something in a certain way, and if it is that way, they give it credibility. Then you can mess with it. Then you can tell the truth. Then you can do different things. But there are parameters in all audience expectation,
Yeah.
and you need to stay within those parameters and it has to be very deliberate and very careful if you're going to go outside those parameters.
Okay. And would you say that filmmaking is something that, let's say, the more projects that you take on, the better that your skills develop, or it's like that you learn consistently?
Well, funny enough, people say our best documentary was our first one when we didn't know what we were doing. Right?
Okay.
I think there's a tendency. It's kind of like bands and their second albums. The first one is original, from the heart, raw, maybe amateur. Just everything they've all been thinking and all that. And then the second one is we have to get serious now and do it the way everyone else does it, and there's a certain element of boringness and conformity there. I mean, and that may sound like I'm contradicting myself there, but I'm not. I remember our first documentary that we produced exclusively. We did other ones with other groups. It was, I remember speaking to an expert, and I said I wanted to be like in the Michael Moore style. And he says, "Well, this is what Michael Moore does. He uses archive. He does this. He listed 6 things that are the staple of a Michael Moore documentary." I looked at him and goes, "Okay," and I'm sure we did those. Now, we may have done them not as professionally as him. We didn't have the budgets, the time, and the money, but I stayed within those parameters for the first documentary, and then. I think for the second documentary, we decided we need to be more BBC. I think it was just boring. I think it was just so. Sometimes you can learn the wrong lessons as you get experienced.
Okay. Your movie Gosnell has received the most money in crowdfunding for a movie in the Indiegogo. Is it
Yes.
the right company?
Yes.
And so, what do you think contributed to the success of Gosnell in crowdfunding specifically?
Well, obviously, I mean, Gosnell was about abortion, right? Which was a big story. But at the time, crowdfunding was relatively new. It was 2013, 2012, I think. Crowdfunding was relatively new. It was relatively exciting. Now everyone crowdfunds for everything, right? If you break your toe on a chair, you crowdfund for the medical care, and it's like if your dog gets sick, you crowdfund. Back then it was relatively new. People weren't jaded. So we said, the media, people are trying to cover this story up. Help us smash the cover up. And those are very strong messages. Those get people's juices flowing. And crowdfunding was a progressive thing, was a liberal thing. We were saying there's a conservative story here. There's a story that's not being told. Every movie and documentary is a pro-abortion story. We're saying, let's tell the truth. Let's look at the story behind the story. And those are very effective messages, very effective asks. So we were giving people an opportunity to stick a finger up to the establishment, stick a finger up to the people who censored the truth. We're giving people a chance to tell the truth. We're giving people to take what was a progressive way of raising money, crowdfunding, and hijacking it for their own means. So there was a sense of guerrilla. There was a sense of being underground, and sticking the finger up. And those are very motivating factors. So at the time, and that was another thing. We looked at what was the most successful movie in Indiegogo at the time. They'd raised $2 million for a movie, and we deliberately asked for 2.1 because we also give them a target.
Yeah.
Right, and we give them a record to break. We said, "Would you like to break a record? Would you like to give us a lot of money? Is okay, because you do need a lot of money to make a movie. But would you like to break a record? Would you like to be part of something historic? That's a pretty big thing. Imagine that, being part of something historic. So we offered people the chance to be part of something historic.
It's inspiring. It makes you want to like actively get involved in it rather than just pass by.
Yeah, so, most people, I suppose, most people don't do important things in their lives, right? Most people live their lives, raise their families. Those are important things too, by the way. Work hard, those are very important things. But most people, they think, I have never done anything important or historic. They're wrong, right? Getting up, going to work, and raising your family is a very important and historic thing that needs to be done. But most people think, we were offering them a chance to be part of a movement, to be part of, those are big motivating factors.
Yeah. And as well as being like a journalist, as a filmmaker, and like social media is constantly developing, like every single day, or there's something new happening so frequently. Is it something that you have to stay on top of as a filmmaker constantly?
Yeah, and I'd say we feel, it's very hard to keep up, because I don't think there was Twitter even existed. Maybe it did exist when we did Cosmo. That's how new Twitter is. We're not on TikTok, for example. So it's hard to keep up, and it's expensive to keep up. So that's a problem.
I also wanted to say, I watched your movie, My Son Hunter, very recently. I actually really enjoyed it, and there was one part of it where it was, I try and say it correctly, but it was something along the lines of, "This is a joke, except for all the facts."
Yes.
So, like, why did you choose this topic specifically, or was it something that you, I suppose, was it something that wasn't being reported on at the time, and you were like, "This needs"?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the Hunter Biden laptop story. You're studying journalism. It's one of the biggest. I was going to say failures of journalism, but it's actually one of the biggest journalistic scandals in the decade. A month before the election, the son of the presidential candidate, the vice president, in fact, his laptop was leaked. Well, actually, it wasn't leaked. He signed a thing that said, "If I don't collect it, you own it," and it showed prima facie evidence of the presidential candidate getting 10% of all his deals with companies owned by the Chinese government, the Ukrainian government, and the Russian government. Right? Not a bad story, right? The mainstream media deliberately chose not to cover it. They decided, and they chose not to investigate it. Right? They didn't. It wasn't like they said, "We have investigated it and found it to be fake." It was, "We are not even going to investigate it, and we're not going to cover what it says, and we're not going to cover the New York Post." The New York Post, the oldest newspaper in the English language, had investigated it and found it to be accurate. And surprise, surprise, 4 years later, the FBI announced at Hunter Biden's recent trial that everything in the laptop was genuine.
Yeah.
So this is the biggest journalistic failure. Actually, it's not a failure, scandal of the decade, I would say, one of them. And that's a story. And I just felt this is a story that's not been told. A movie is a great way of getting these stories out. Movies about journalists there's been a long and noble and ignoble history of them. So it's just another story about journalism. That's what's motivated us to make that movie. It was an untold story. Our not-for-profit is the Untold Story Society.
Yeah, okay, wow. And I suppose, me personally, when I was watching it, at times I almost not felt bad for Hunter, but you could almost feel sympathy or kind of realize like how his life ended in this kind of whirlwind of just crap, I guess. Was this like I suppose, an intention, or was it just kind of stick to the facts and, it kind of came from there?
No, it was definitely our intention not to demonize Hunter Biden, because if and it's also it's a trap that a lot of people fall into, actually, is that on all sides, if you demonize people, no one can feel, no one can understand. Everyone can. If you make someone bad and they do bad things, that's not a story.
Yeah.
That's But if you make someone good who's brought down by their flaws, who could be saved by those flaws, continues to do what they do because of those flaws, that's a much more human story. So you have to make these people human.
Yeah.
You have to humanize them. You can't demonize them. It's bad person does bad things. Who cares? We all know that. Good person does bad things because of weaknesses, because of family trauma, because of all sorts of reasons, and is allowed to do it and encouraged to do it by other bad people who should be saving him. That's an interesting story. And he's offered a way out. Does he choose it? Does he accept it? Or does he go about on his path? That's an interesting story. That's a story worth telling. That's a story worth watching. So yes, our people, funny enough, you see that a lot about the work we do. We did FBI Lovebirds, and I remember one critic saying, McAleer set out to demonize these people, but actually he humanizes them. And I'm going, maybe that was my intention from the beginning, was to humanize them, to make people understand, because most bad things in the world, most corruption in the world, it's not done by evil people. It's done by good people who are corrupted. And that's a much more interesting story. Bad people who do bad things, that's, who cares? Good people who are corrupted, that's people are very interested in that. This could be you.
When you're making a movie like My Son Hunter, I suppose even though it's a movie of facts, some people don't want to be confronted with these facts. I said, some
Yes.
people who are frustrated, or they say, "Oh no, this can't be true." As a filmmaker, is it frustrating having to, I suppose, deal with these people?
No, it was very tough, actually. The reviews we got for My Son Hunter movie, not tough, but it was kind of sad, actually. All these journalists, the New Yorker, right, which used to have Pauline Kael, the world's greatest film critic, in their staff, did 2,000 words lambasting the My Son Hunter movie. And I remember the headline: "This is not the Hunter Biden movie we asked for or needed." I'm going, okay, so you agree we need a Hunter Biden movie. Good, okay. Who's doing it? Why is Hollywood not doing this?
Yeah.
Right? This is a great world-class story. It's got exotic locations: the Ukraine, Russia, Monaco, China, DC, Hollywood. Like, Hunter Biden was in all these places doing deals. He was on yachts. He was taking drugs. He was sleeping with hookers. He was filming it. It's got intrigue. It's got spies. It's got corruption. It's got all these great Hollywood tropes, all these great Hollywood stories. And why is Hollywood not doing it? So don't talk to me about this is not the Hunter Biden movie we need. If there was 3 Hunter Biden movies out there, maybe that, it's the only Hunter Biden movie that anyone's made, right? So let's look at it. And then it's like, they actually humanize Hunter Biden. I'm going, yeah, that was our plan, actually. And then just this nonsense about the movie. And it's like, I'm not saying it's a perfect movie, but it's an entertaining movie. It's a funny movie. It doesn't take itself too seriously. It's bizarre. It's surreal. It makes fun of itself. It's like Deadpool. It's got all these great qualities. And I'm going, your criticism of it has no credibility. It's kind of sad. And I always kind of think, this is what you need the journalism to do. To write this, to go into a story with a pre-written criticism and the facts not getting in the way. It was kind of, I felt sad for the journalists, actually. I was thinking, you're in a terrible job, It's like, where you can't the facts will not be allowed to get in the way of your truth. And it's like, that is sad. That is not journalism. And you're not a
Mm.
journalist. You may have started off in college wanting to be a journalist, but I don't know what you are now, but you're not a journalist.
Yeah, okay. It's like, is it when they're ignoring what's in front of them and
Yes.
they're going into it with a preconceived, I suppose this is wrong or this isn't right.
Well, even a preconceived intention to discredit the movie. And it's kind of like all those, where we were constantly told the White House correspondents are the smartest, most cynical bunch of journalists. I remember back in '94 when Clinton came to Belfast, and there was the Secret Service detail, and there was this and the advance party, but the people who you really had to fear were the whip smart, cynical White House correspondents who, if their mother told them she loved them, they'd demand an affidavit or a lie detector test. So that's cynical. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, guys, you missed the biggest story of the decade, didn't you? Because you didn't notice the guy you were covering was a drooling idiot. And it's like, as in, I'm not going to tell you what I can see with my own eyes. And that was kind of like the My Son Hunter movie. I'm not going to tell you what I can see with my own eyes, because, in fact, maybe they don't see it. Maybe, which is worse? They were lying about Joe Biden and the Hunter Biden movie, or they were looking at it and they were so far in and so far committed to, combating Donald Trump and not letting Trump back in, that their brain was not allowing them to see what they could see. I don't know which it is.
Yeah.
I think it's the first, that they're so far committed. It's a noble lie. It's lying for the greater good, and missing the greater story.
Yeah. And as a like a storyteller and a filmmaker, is criticism part of the job, or is it ever hard to kind of like separate maybe from personal life when there's, let's say, if someone gives a bad review, is it hard to, I suppose, separate yourself?
No, I mean, I don't. The reviews don't matter, because sometimes you get a review and funny, the reviews that matter are the ones that criticize what you probably know somewhere is wrong. As you're doing it, you think, I wish I could do this better, and then the review picks that out and say this could have been done better. You go, yeah, but when they tell you that the Hunter Biden movie is not dramatic or not funny or not interesting or not original, you
Yeah.
just go, that's not true. You're
Yeah.
not like. There are many things you could say about the Hunter Biden movie, but that it's not entertaining. I remember people, oh, it's boring. It's going, well, you're telling me the Hunter Biden movie is boring? And like, it's not. It's funny. If you watch it in a movie house with people, there's guffaws of laughter, right?
Yeah.
Real audiences, not people, committed people who are out to push an agenda. So no, that's sad, actually. And it's why the media isn't as powerful as it used to be,
Mm.
because no one takes them seriously anymore. Everyone thinks, well, you're just pushing a line there, and I don't take it seriously. I just look at headlines now, and if they're writing about me, I look at the headline and go, this is the same article that was published about me a year ago or 2 years ago, and it's like, you haven't done your research, you've done nothing original, you didn't want, it's like, okay, I'm not going to.
Yeah.
I don't think I would. I've stopped reading a lot of them, actually.
Yeah. And let's say when you put out, let's say, a piece of work and it gets great reviews, is it that then it's obviously it must be, I feel like, a great feeling.
Yeah, yeah, yes. It's funny. I'm not. Yeah, it is a great feeling. Yes, it is. But to me, ultimately, actually, funny enough, what I think about the great reviews is, oh, this is a great way for me to keep going and do the next thing.
Yeah, okay. And
You know,
do you have a favorite piece that you've done in, maybe in filmmaking or even in journalistic work? Is there a piece that stands out to you?
um, our recent Kevin Spacey podcast, Kevin Spacey Trial Unfiltered, is very powerful. It's very well produced. It's very well researched, and and it tells an untold story. It's unimpeachable,
Yeah.
and I. So yeah, that to me, that's the one. If anyone wants to see a piece of work that we've done, it's the Kevin Spacey trial unfiltered. Is the podcast is what really gets, I think, is the most important one.
Okay, wow. Yeah. Do you have any upcoming work that you'd like to tell us about, or?
Well, we've just done the October 7th play in New York, and it's a verbatim play. We went to Israel after October 7th and interviewed maybe 20 people who went through that day, and we took their stories and boiled them down into a play, a verbatim play, which is another way of doing journalism, by the way, is verbatim theater, where where you go to a court case, or you go to a play, or you go to a tribunal. Say, I suppose Vincent Brown started it first with his coverage of the tribunals back, 20 years ago, where you reenact the evidence, you reenact the clashes in the courtroom, and we did October 7th, the play, and we took 13 of the stories, the most dramatic stories,
Yeah.
and reenacted them on stage, and we so that, to me, that's a very, very important play we're doing, and now we're going to take it on a campus tour of America,
Oh, wow. Okay.
around the Ivy Leagues, where all the encampments were
Yeah.
during last year, to really bring the truth about October 7th, because there's so much talk now about the war in Gaza and all that, and the war in Gaza and all that, and the October 7th play. So yeah, we're going to take it around the campuses, and this is pure journalism. It's very funny. I do a lot of verbatim theater, verbatim podcasts too. Actually, another project that I really I'm proud of was the Harvey Weinstein trial unfiltered, where we went and covered the Harvey Weinstein trial every day in New York, and had a reenactment that night by Hollywood voice actors from the transcript, and wrapped it into a podcast in people's inbox the next morning. And
Wow.
we did it every day. And, as the trial went on, we gradually realized this man, there's not enough evidence to convict this man. I'm not saying he's an innocent man. I'm saying the evidence isn't there for the charges. And, we got a lot of stick for that. And now a lot of people like the podcast. The Court of Appeal has just confirmed our opinion. He's been cleared of all his charges. So verbatim work is very, very important. It's very, very interesting. It's a new form of journalism in many ways. And we're going to take the play around the college campuses and bring the truth to people who need to hear it.
That sounds really interesting. Yeah. I saw something. I can't remember where I saw it, but I think I said that you and your wife predicted an attempt at Donald Trump's life. I think, was it 4 or 5 years ago?
Yes. So if at the time, this is in 2017, and there was about 20 or 30 examples of the mainstream media and Hollywood either calling for or celebrating the assassination of Donald Trump, or violence on Donald Trump, from Kathy Griffin holding a headless Trump like this, to Shakespeare in the Park, in Central Park, reenacting Julius Caesar and making it into Donald Trump and him getting stabbed. There was just these example, Madonna saying she wanted to blow up the White House, all these things. And so I thought, and it's a piece of journalism, we should do an exhibition, the assassination of Donald Trump as made glorious by the mainstream media.
Yeah.
And it for various logistical reasons, it didn't work out, but that was 2017. And there are dozens of examples since then. And, lo and behold, it happened.
It happened. Yeah.
It happened. And it's like, well, we hear a lot about hate crime. I don't believe in hate, in hate crime legislation. But, if you're saying some guy on a street corner is responsible for some act of violence 1,000 miles away or 100 miles away, well, then maybe the mainstream media in Hollywood should look at themselves. So we predicted, it's not that we predicted, I mean, we said we predicted, but we said, look, if you're arguing X and Y equals Z, well, then what about your own statements? What part are you playing in this, in normalizing violence against political people?
Yeah, yeah, okay. Because it does seem like that over in America. Like it's a very tense political scenario over there. It's just two sides that just do not click at all.
Well, I mean, I grew up in Northern Ireland. It was a lot more violent there when I was growing up, than America is now. I think you're having your own political tensions in Southern Ireland at the moment that are bubbling over into violence. So I think politics has become a lot more intolerant. I think, people are being shut down left, right, and centre. The media has become more intolerant. Or media has become less about finding out the truth. It's become more about, actually, it seems the journalism now is, let's find something that somebody said on Twitter 20 years ago or 10 years ago, so that we can shut them down. Or let's find something, let's get someone cancelled. And it's like, cancellation is the biggest piece of bullying. It's the biggest piece of violence. It's destroying lives. And journalists are leading that charge. And to me, that's not what journalism is. Journalism should not be about shutting people down. It should be about giving people a voice. Journalists who say, "Oh, the landscape has become very intolerant," look at yourself and your role in that.
Yeah, yeah. And how important would you say that investigative journalism is today? Would you say it has a more important role than before, or?
Well, it depends what you mean by investigative journalism. As I say, investigative journalism now seems to be, let's find something embarrassing or something that we can twist into embarrassing, there's something embarrassing that someone said, or something we can twist into what this person said and shut them down. And to me, that's not journalism. That's not investigative journalism. That's just Twitter archaeology or internet archaeology, and it's like you're shutting people down for things they said or things they may believe or things they may believe then and don't believe now, and it's like, it's not really the world's biggest scandal, but it seems to be in the world we live in that it is.
Yeah, yeah, like people getting cancelled for things I said like 10 years ago or something criminal like this is crazy. Yeah. And my last question for today is, as a journalist and as a filmmaker and author, is it ever hard to separate like let's say personal and work life, because you always see a story somewhere maybe?
Yeah, no, we always see a story. And I work with my wife, so it's very personal. No, switching off is difficult, but I think I always call journalism a disease, not a profession. You catch it, and it's and there's no cure for it. Even when you're on holidays. So I just say that to journalism students: just be careful. It can become very addictive.
Yeah.
Don't forget to have a life.
It's a good point. I wanted to just say as well, thank you very much for coming on here today, and it's been great talking with you.
Thank you, Connor.
So guys, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the What's Going On podcast, and I hope you've enjoyed this interview with Phelim McAleer. And if you would like to, please check out his podcast, the Anne and Phelim Scoop, a very interesting podcast. And as well, I've a bit of news. So as some of you'll know, the Olympics have started. What's that? That's official. I copped the official Olympic bird. How much did it cost? I don't want to talk about it. I'm keeping that a secret, a close guarded secret, because the fella who sold me this, he was saying to himself, "Oh, I've got him real good," because this was €35. €35. We're going through recession right now over this bird. So yeah, there's a bit of news. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed listening to this podcast. Also, some of you were probably wondering like, oh, nah, he's going to forget about this podcast again. It's going straight back down. No, we're back. When I say we're back, I meant it. We're back. So if you haven't done it already, tell your mom, tell your dad, tell your grandmother, tell your grandfather, tell the dog that the What's Going On podcast is back. And as well, just thank you very much for listening. Okay, see you guys.